Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming your way with the market recap for Friday. It is the 8th, not the 7th, 8th of February. Interesting day in the market, gapped down early and really fought back all day long. So definitely the bulls aren't done yet, no doubt about it. Some big movers, Mattel up big on earnings, a big bounce back day for EA after its earning disaster. You had one of the S&P companies, HSIC, it's Henry Schein's, they were down 25%, but really they aren't. If you saw that and thought that was kind of weird. It was because they're spinning off their animal health business. And so it's not quite all figured out just yet, but they are basically turning into two companies. And so when you see them down into 25% on the day, really it was kind of taking into the adjustment. So imagine pretty soon we'll see a new chart for them. And good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all having a great Friday. Hope it was a good day in and out of the market. Somehow or another, I lost my charts. I closed the wrong button as I was closing things. I always have a million tabs open, so I try to close them down to just what I need here in the market recap, but close the wrong one. So, but always great to see you guys, and hope you're looking forward to a nice, exciting weekend, doing all sorts of fun stuff. As we take a look here at the price action on the S&P, you guys know this, I'll tell it to you anyway, gapping down, selling in the futures market, started that drift to the downside, and then really the entire second half of the day just kind of chopped our way back up. The last little bit, the last 15 minutes or so, we really saw a nice pop, and we kind of saw it everywhere, so was it people covering shorts, buying in before the weekend while the getting was good? I don't know, but we did see a nice little pop to the upside here as the day came to a halt. So not a whole lot to say. I mean, really, this was kind of a pullback, at least it appeared to be. It appears to be, at least to me, that way still. And hello, Patricia, Blake, Aditra, Adam, Tiago. Always good to see you guys. It's always my pleasure. Thanks for hanging out with me a little bit. I think it's about time for me to buy a new mouse again. Some of you guys might remember the great mouse revolt of, I think it was in November, December, where the mouse really revolted. So it's not so bad, but it's starting to need a couple clicks. So about that time. As we look at our daily charts, again, we know that we gapped to the open, really saw us close strong on the day as buyers really come working back in. I think we've seen that downward movement off of, the 200-day moving average in the S&P and the NASDAQ. I think we can now know that that is, not just a potential level of resistance as we were looking at it maybe last week at this time. Now we know that it at least is something, right? We've got to break, that turned into something. Again, for a pullback opportunity, I found all sorts of interesting pullback opportunities as I was combing through the market today for today's scouting report and for my watch list next week. I still will maintain it. The bullish signals are there. I don't have any reason to believe that this is anything other than a bullish pullback right now. That may change. We'll watch it in real time. But I think right now, from a resistance point of view, we know exactly where to be looking here at that 200-day moving average on the S&P 500. Upward movement on Monday, I could, that'd be a little more of an aggressive methodology, but I could understand folks, looking at that as a buying opportunity. If we get carry over the end of the day or second half of the day's momentum into Monday morning, I imagine it's going to get some folks into some bullish plays. So, and good afternoon, Tanner. Great to see you, my friend. Hope you're a little bit warmer today. Feels a little warmer here today, but a little, I do mean a little. So over in NASDAQ, very, very similar chart. I think we can really look at it the same way. We've now got a level of resistance before our level of resistance, right? It's, at 2,800 on the S&P. Here on NASDAQ, it's in that 7150 range, depending on probably you. And now we know we have this, this short-term resistance zone that we do need to contend with. Now, if I'm getting into pullback trades on Monday or Tuesday of next week, am I going to hit the panic button if we approach this resistance zone? No, I'm not, but I'm going to remember it. I might be, for a directional trade at least, I might be, scaling out. I might be converting, into a spread, selling some calls against it or something along those lines. But certainly buyers back in here today. So yeah, Blake, I know I complain a lot, but I've talked to, people that are colder than me. It hasn't stopped me from complaining about the cold though. And hey, Andy, how are you, my friend? Nice little hammer at the 200 here on the Dow Jones. Did on the intraday break below that those averages, the 9 and probably more importantly, the 200 period moving average. Nice little hammer candlestick to close the day. So with the price action, the way it developed as the day progressed, we are seeing a lot of bullish activity just going into our open here on Monday. We'll still have to see what kind of weird things get the futures market right between now and then when we get going on Sunday. But gotta like the development. If you were looking at this as a pullback opportunity, if you were looking at it as a bearish opportunity, I think what you want to see is you want to see some of those buyers come back in, show a little upward movement, work towards that resistance, and then be scared, get out, and then break a support level. Right? If we see that, and that's going to take some time to develop if we are looking on the bearish side, that is going to take some time to develop to get those signals, but maybe that's the way it goes, right? But we'll see them together. As of right now, no reason for, in my opinion, to think that we will see over in the Russell, very similar to everything else. Nice little tiny hammer candlestick. If you look at these guys on an intraday, here's my mouse being weird again. There we go. 15-minute time frame. We actually have a nice little double bottom pattern forming going into next week's open. That's just an intraday chart, but does kind of show that maybe there is a little bit of a turnaround here early next week off of a couple of days of selling, right? So we've definitely seen a lot more selling in our time together. That is for sure. So, for me, going into next week, I expected as I was kind of scanning, and this is exactly what I found, a lot more interesting bullish trading opportunities than bearish trading opportunities. As I always say, it's important to have candidates on both sides. Just because I think this is a pullback doesn't make me right, right? So, I want to have some bearish plays, and we'll definitely get some interesting ones to you in our scouting reports here this weekend. As we move into our sectors, over in our materials, we came down and tested support at that swing low at around $52. Now we did pop off of it, so that is impressive. But this looks a lot more sideways to me than showing a lot of strength right now. And whereas a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I really liked this area. Last week, I liked it more than I do right now. I still think for me, until something changes, I'm going to be, I am still bullish and will maintain that bullish stance above $52. As long as we're closing above that, I will stay on the bullish side of things. But I think it's one of those areas that it needs to be a break. Pullbacks, I'm not really interested in pullbacks in this sector overall. I'm going to want to see it come out of this range. You guys know me. I'm a coward. I'll be the first to admit it. These guys have gone into this little sideways, and I've seen so many things go into these sideways runs that just stay in sideways runs forever, which is fine for cash flow trades, and that's perfectly legitimate. But for directional trades, at least for me, I don't like that type of an environment. So you're kind of on, not timeout materials as long as you're above 52, but I'm putting you in the you are sideways at least going into next week. So, and good afternoon, Zach. Great to see you, my friend. Hope you had a great day. Energy really sold off here yesterday and carried that momentum here into today before bumping right into this old turnaround point, right? This old support levels. We've talked before, there's not a lot of history here, but it's big history that is there, right? And at least for today, that acted as a support level. If we can get some upward movement with energy, you guys know me, for me, it's got to take out that 65 resistance level. It just has to. And that is what I need it to do to feel comfortable. But this is an appealing pullback, development the last 3 days of candlesticks. If I wasn't worried about that 65, I would probably really like the way this chart looked. So I would understand if people are looking at bullish retracement opportunities early next week in the energy sector. I'm not, I don't, I'm just scared of that 65, and I'm going to stay scared of that 65. I can always buy if it breaks 65, right? And cheer for anybody who buys before then. If we see some upward movement and can define this as support, this might actually shape up, and it's not there yet. We're going to need some movement, and we're going to need to hold this support zone. But if we get a little bit of upward movement early in the week, we might actually get some K-trade development, where once we know that this is support, I think it is, we know we've had price action here. It was intraday support, not enough to call it a swing support, in my opinion. But if we see some upward movement off of it, all of a sudden, maybe some of these energy stocks can go into these K trades where we're either buying if it breaks resistance or selling if it breaks support. Now, again, for me, I need some upward movement. I need somebody to be willing to buy before 65 for that to happen. So, but a very interesting look. And you have to like the way I love the candlestick development here. If it wasn't for 65, I would probably really like the energy sector. But you can't not like what you not like, right? So over in financials, we saw some of the banks sell off, some bad news on Wells Fargo, or at least some inconvenient news on Wells Fargo, really pushing down fairly substantially here today. Did come off of our lows, no doubt about that. Not quite as a pretty of a pullback, but much like energy, it is a pullback. You know, and I think for a lot of us, if we're looking at this as a pullback opportunity, again, it's going to be what areas do we want to be? I do continue to like the financial sector, but as I've said before, I'm going to like it a lot more above 2650 than I do below 2650. Some of those charts aren't looking great. There are overhead levels of resistance, probably at least right now, more of a breakout area for me than a pullback area. But the pullback is developed here. Again, that's my opinion, and you may or may not agree with it, and that's cool. We do have that nice little pullback. We did close below the 20. Don't love that, but any potential upward movement to give us a confirmation candle, because I don't think we have confirmation candles, broadly speaking, today. I think we have those potential turnaround candles that lead to Monday's confirmation candle. At least that's how I'm approaching it. If we get that upward movement, then I won't have to worry about being below that 20-period moving average anymore. 2650, definitely a number we want to be keeping an eye on. I think you can look at, you know, kind of the high point that we put in just below that. It's a little tight in there, I think, across the board. Now, breakouts, for example, I don't know if it will make it, but I'm going to bring SYF over to our scouting report meeting for discussion. These guys had a great earnings report and have consolidated right below their 200-day moving average ever since. We've got a rising 9 EMA starting to put us into a little bit of a pinch, a break to the upside. You know, that type of pattern I could be interested in within the financial sector. Of course, I'm always interested in that type of a pattern, so we will see. It definitely got a little bit of a pinch going here right now, not a very fast-moving stock. But that type of a pattern where I've consolidated after a nice gap to the upside, I am always interested in that one. So that's the type of thing, at least for me, I'll be looking at over in the financial area side of the world. So not on SYF for me, Zach. No, at least not with where it is right now. For me, there's just too much overall momentum to the upside. Really good earnings report. I wouldn't really want to go against them personally. I don't think we have quite as clear of a level of support that's developed as we do of a level of resistance. So if this were to drag out a little bit longer, maybe, and it might, right? It might, be in this, range. I was looking at it last week too. It might drag out a little bit longer. If that happens, yeah, I could be interested in doing that. But right now, I still think the momentum is skewed to the upside. So I'd really be looking at it more for a break to the upside, as opposed to a play it if it breaks resistance as a buy, or a play it if it breaks support as a sell. So again, that might just be the way I look at it. And so, your mileage may vary, but I don't think they have quite the same level of support. Plus, we did have a good response to the earnings here very recently. So to me, the momentum is more of an upside play in something that looks like this. That makes sense. So I don't know. It's one of those things. I'll know it when I know it, if you will. Let me give you an example here. I know it when I see it. CAG. who's, after huge downward movement, for quite some time, a big tank. I've been watching them. I know many of you have been watching them too, for a potential break to the downside. Well, now we're developing into several weeks of a sideways range. This is the type of thing that I'd be more inclined to do a K trade on. Maybe you don't specifically like CAG, of course, but this type of development where it really has gone into a range, that pressure is really building up within the price action. So if it takes out one way or the other, you can kind of decide. I was kind of just thinking about it. I'm not sold on it just yet, but I was just doing a preliminary kind of risk to reward ratio. If it does break to the upside, looks like it'd be a little over 2-to-1. There's that's a little more of an aggressive trade because we are going against everything but short-term price movement, right? A lot of negativity, but and hopefully something like this develops a little bit longer. I'd love to see it try for a few more weeks and then ultimately break one way. So you want to be careful, I think, Zach, with those K trades because they can be very tempting. But I think a lot of times there's going to be a clear one side is better than the others. And while you may or may not agree with me on SYF, I agree with me, right? So, I want to be looking to be trading into where I guess the side that seems the most likely if it breaks. I hope that makes sense. But always fun to talk K trades, no doubt. Over in the industrials, nice little bounce back day. Everything's going to look very similar coming off those lows, showing relative strength still. Came into that 9 EMA, and that is where we popped off of that. People are not shy about buying into the industrial sector right now. It doesn't take much of a reason for folks to buy it, at least as of right now. Really wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of pullback, but I'm not really holding my breath that's what's going to happen. Still major risk, our overhead resistance is hanging out here at $74. We'll want to keep an eye on that one. I'm not overly concerned if and when we get to it, but it is an area that is probably worth keeping an eye on. But at least from a momentum and price action point of view, I don't really think you can say anything other than positive things about this sector overall right now. Continuing to show great momentum. Buyers are coming in quickly. Every deal is a good deal, it seems like right now. At least that's how traders are treating this sector as a whole. So keep an eye on 74. We'll kind of follow along together, but certainly a really nice really nice bounce off of that 9 EMA. So yeah, don't be afraid of the V's. To think about the way V's are kind of tough because I never think they're going to happen, and then they do. So I always kind of think in, steps. Here was a buy signal. Here's another buy signal, and basically build into it that way. We talked about that quite a bit as we were first bottoming out. Hey, there's a buy signal. It's just a close above the 9, but it's something. There's a close above the 20. It's something. There's a break of resistance. It's something. So instead of, is this the bottom and hope for a V, kind of work your way into it. The more, signals I'm seeing to that side, well, I'm working my way in. So, hey, I didn't expect it to be the V-shaped recovery that it has been. But working into bullish trades along the way makes it a little bit easier to deal with. Yeah, you look at it in hindsight and you think, wow, what a recovery, right? So over in tech, really nice bounce back day here today as well. Very nice candle coming off of the lows, closing very, very strong. Again, just like our overall market, just like our NASDAQ, we now know that this is resistance. We saw it stop. We saw price depreciation. We saw that movement. So we want to kind of keep an eye on that again. Do I think it's a big deal with the way it's developed right now? No, I don't. But it was a place where it stopped going up and started to go down. My opinion, whatever, right? That is truly what did happen. So that might be something we want to keep an eye on, but a lot of momentum here today. I still do like this sector. I will respect this resistance for sure, but I'm not overly concerned about that resistance, at least as of right now. So exactly, Blake. Just kind of, follow your signals. I never assume anything's going to move very quick. And it usually moves faster than I think it's going to. So, but I always kind of just, I think in terms, and you guys probably figured me out by now, that kind of one step at a time. If it breaks here, where's the next logical stop? If it does this, where's the next logical stop? And that's just the way my brain kind of absorbs price movement, I guess, in the market. And that, keeps me from, missing turnaround. Because, hey, just like everybody else, I didn't expect this to be the bottom the day after Christmas, right? We were coming out of a huge sell-off. I didn't expect it. Probably you guys didn't expect it. Most people, if they're being honest, didn't think that was the turnaround day, but we kind of saw the close above the 9 and then a break of resistance. And that's really good advice, Blake. Just kind of run with your signals and let them be your guide, because they're usually smarter than you. So, at least I think so. The chart's always going to be smarter than me because it's not so easily influenced by fear and greed and bias and things like that. So good bounce back over in tech. Just kind of continuing to creep to the upside in the staples sector. We've got some big name companies next week. Coke, Pepsi, to name a couple, are reporting in this sector here next week. So definitely some things that could impact this one way or the other. I'll be the guy who's a broken record. That is going to bother me until it's gone. I understand the signals are still to the bullish side of things. Breaking more intraday resistance today, showing more upward movement here today. So if you aren't as big of a wimp as me and are working into this sector from a bullish point of view, I'm not going to knock you. I'm just scared of that trend line until I'm not anymore. So, but we will have some earnings coming out. This is kind of a mixed bag area too, I think. So yeah, I could understand this area being appealing. It's kind of a mixed bag type of an area. I found some bullish, nice bullish setups, nice bearish setups within this sector. So really, for the most part, I think the way to approach this sector, and I generally feel this way, but I feel this way quite a bit now with where the chart is to, pick individual stocks within it, trade, your Church and Dwight or whatever, it is, as opposed to, try to, fight with that. And again, you may not agree with me. And if that doesn't concern you, you probably really do like this chart. If you are not concerned about this old trend line, you probably really like the upside that's available within this sector. So I do get that. I am just concerned because I always am concerned about that. You guys know that. So if nothing else, I'm consistent, right? So, yeah, I mean, it could. And that's, the thing is that's why I always go with price action. Because headlines drive me crazy, Zach. The market tanks. It's down it's down 1%. Stocks surge or crude surges. I mean, the way I see the world of news these days is it's not so much news. It's basically there for clicks, there for views. And while I'm not going to knock that business model by any means, I don't really find it that useful. And so that's why I always trust price action, because utilities, whatever the talking heads are thinking about utilities, at least short term, and that's, when we're looking at price action, that's kind of where we're starting, is it's showing strength, regardless of whatever my crazy, intelligent, whatever reasoning is. That's how I always approach it is, news. I don't ignore it, the big stuff at least, but the headlines, yeah, I stay away from them personally. I'd live in a bubble if I could, or at least a news bubble. So, but more follow through here today in the utility sector. Speaking of them, that was a nice clean break yesterday, whether it was the trend line or that old resistance zone. Unlike things that we've seen in the past, we were able to get that follow through here today. Definitely some interesting looking utility stocks. Now, it's a fairly big week earnings wise for utility stocks. Now, I mean, utility stocks, right? They're not Netflix, they're not Apple. So we're probably not going to see a bunch of dramatic, gaps one way or another. But I found three setups that in the utility sector I wanted to follow next week, and every one of them had earnings. And then looking at it, there's quite a few, relatively speaking, utility earnings coming out. So it can be something to keep an eye on. I don't expect it to have a dramatic, unless everybody just has a great report, or everybody has a terrible report, because utilities don't have a long history of being particularly volatile. So exactly, Adam, clickbait it is. So, but still plenty of room, within this sector. Don't really have a lot of serious overhead until 57. We kind of saw a little bit of action in that mid 56 range in days gone by, but really not a lot to stand in our way. So it'll be interesting how earnings impact that. I'm not expecting it to be a big deal one way or the other, but it'll be interesting. Over in healthcare, again, another really mixed area. I found bullish and bearish setups for next week within this sector. Both on both sides, I really liked them. We didn't really get a lot of clarity from the earnings. It was very mixed, in my opinion, and so if we were hoping for that, and I was. We didn't get that. Now, I still think the best signal as we're thinking about the sector as a whole and the ETF specifically, I think the best signal is going to be the break. I still think that. I really liked it 2 days ago. We're a little ways away from it now, so there is some room to take a run at it if that's my style. But I do think that's going to be the signal that's the best trading signal in the short term, at the break of that short-term resistance. Beyond that, there's lots of room for us to run within this sector. Right now, I think we can continue to we've seen the history at that $89 mark, but really our swing low is kind of the as long as we're holding this, we're still in that upward trend, right? At least for me, making higher highs and higher lows, we can pull back even more and not violate that trend. So a little bit of a pullback going on. Could see, for me, I'm open to really either side next week. Now, if we do break resistance, I'll be a lot more skewed to the bullish side within this sector. But right now, while we're in this range, I'm really personally comfortable on both sides. Good bullish setup, let's do it. Nice little breakout, absolutely. I certainly am. I'm okay with that. So, but a nice bounce off of the lows today, wherever you find yourselves, agreeing or disagreeing with me, just like the rest of the market. Nice little rally off of a rough start. Nice, close those last 10, 15 minutes. A lot of buying coming back into this sector as well. Discretionary is just having a little harder time because they've got Amazon in there, right? And Amazon can drag you one way or the other. Putting a nice little hammer off of that 20 period moving average. Again, one of those pullback areas that I think could be appealing to some folks. Not a lot of resistance until we work to these highs that we've just recently failed at. We do want to respect those, right? Again, we've seen that downward movement clearly off of those highs, at least from a short-term perspective. We do want to respect that resistance zone, I think. A little bit of room between here and there. So there's not as pretty of a pullback, especially the last three candles, as say the energy sector, but not as much scary resistance as the energy sector at the same time, right? So, I think this will really be, again, kind of a picker's market. I'm liking things like Dollar General, somebody I've got a very close eye on. They're within this sector. That thing shows some upward movement. Dollar General breaks out. Well, whatever happens will happen, but that's always one of my favorite things. That's always one of my favorite type of setups. So not really a lot has changed in there. You probably have not changed your opinion based off of the pullback the last couple of days. I think for the most part right now, we're just waiting to see that turnaround and how it responds within this sector. Still lots of little levels, lots of little challenges within this sector to be keeping an eye on. And Amazon not cooperating, Amazon going up will help it a lot, right? Amazon not going down is not even that helpful for it, right? And lastly, over in real estate, again, we just kind of continue to fight at this resistance level as we're seeing different real estate stocks. Some of them have already broken out. A lot of them are kind of putting in very similar patterns, though, where they either are at resistance and are trying to break out, or they broke out last week or a week and a half ago and are kind of in this week-long consolidation type of a period. The sector remains very strong. Doesn't take much for folks to want to buy it these days. It doesn't drop much before people are buying into the real estate sector right now. We're not really getting a lot of clarity right now from where we were last week. We are kind of in a consolidation period. I think it's probably the best way to look at it, and that's okay. This is a V-shaped recovery, almost a textbook. If it wasn't for this one day in here, basically, that drug us all the way down here, we basically up. And so no surprise it's taking a little breather from a broad perspective. But overall, it's not taking much of a reason for folks to buy in off of any real short-term sell-off on the intraday within this sector. And that's really been kind of the case for a while, right? And over communication services, which is its own thing, a little bit of a little bit of a sell-off going with the rest of the market. Nice looking candle here today, no doubt about it. A little upward movement off of yesterday's doji. Nice clean green candle showing a lot of momentum going into Monday. Now, again, as you guys know, this is a little bit of a different type of ETF, and you may not hate it as much as me, and I don't hate it really, but I don't. Like I said yesterday, I don't know how useful it really is trying to track that sector as a whole, because those things can move so differently from one another. But whatever you think about that, Gotta like the upward movement here today. A little bit of room. So if you are liking this ETF, you probably understand that Facebook and Google are big components of it, and a big part of what it's going to do is what they're going to do, but definitely some room to the upside. I'm going to like other areas better, at least from a broad perspective. Now, I like, potential Netflix breaking above 360, like a lot of people probably do. There's a little bit of a breakout opportunity. So I'm okay with things within this sector. We've got Activision. Blizzard has their earnings next week. I'm looking forward to that one. I play lots of, I played lots of Activision Blizzard games in my day, and I had a really good time. For the most part, complained a little bit as well. So I'm always interested in seeing what they're doing. So of course, a Tackle 25 stock too. So always fun to follow that. So nice little turnaround. If you were looking for a pullback, you probably like the way today played out. We didn't, have this huge green candle that makes it impossible to trade into the pullback early next week. But we saw clearly, at least from a short-term perspective, some willingness to buy. And again, I don't think that's terribly surprising. I doubt you guys think that's terribly surprising either, but it's always nice to see it, right? It's always nice to see it. So be interesting to see where it takes us going into next week. Of course, as the market kind of does one thing, the VIX tends to do the other. Nothing really to see here. Even during yesterday's, selling, while we did have a spike, really nothing significant, right, within the VIX. So, traders, at least right now, continue to feel fairly comfortable with things. Nice little upward movement here today over in gold. I think you could call that a confirmation candle. If you bought into gold today, I wouldn't argue against what you did by any stretch of the imagination. Getting a little bit of confirmation, regardless of maybe you're already in or you are thinking about getting in, little more confirmation that 1300 is something that folks, they are looking at that as a support zone. Really nice upward movement here today. As we've talked before, we've got a lot of room to go. Yeah, we have short-term resistance now in the form of our swing high, right? And again, am I going to pay attention to it? Sure. Am I scared of it? Not until I have a reason to be. And today, I don't think you have a reason to be. Beyond that, there's still lots of upside over in gold. I think you really have to like the way that chart looks. Maybe you don't like gold, or maybe you're in gold or whatever, but I think you have to like that price action off of yesterday's candlestick. Nice little pullback developed over there. And as long as 13 holds, I think it will continue to work its way to the upside. Same deal with silver. Now, I think that the gold setup's better, and I've not really been terribly shy about that. I've warmed up to silver pullback, and I still don't mind it as much as I thought maybe I would 2 days ago. But I think from a pullback point of view, I like the way gold looks a little bit better. But they probably are going to move together, as they tend to do. We do have some room. We do have, in my mind, a lot bigger challenge on silver at their recent swing resistance than gold. And I think you guys would probably agree with me. This was a big floor, and we've not been able to cleanly take it out. And so for me, on the pullback, I like gold. Silver, if it breaks that, I'm going to like that quite a bit too. But again, there is room between where we are and that resistance zone, and you may or may not be as afraid of it as I am. So I could understand if this is an area that you prefer from a pullback perspective. Nice upward movement, no doubt, over in the metals market. The dollar kind of took a little bit of a breather here today after a nice little run, closing right at that resistance level. So in true cliffhanger fashion, to be continued, right? We're going to break. We're going to fail at resistance. Well, we have to wait till next week to find out. If we break, and a little bit of a W pattern, no doubt about it. Now, I still am treating this overall as range bound. That would be a buy signal, though, because, well, buy signals are buy signals regardless of what I am, right? A break of resistance would be a little bit of a signal. Probably some room to run to the upside, too, if we can cleanly take that resistance out. I still look at this as neutral overall, but you do have to appreciate the week of price appreciation. That we saw that 200. I'm not surprised it bounced off the 200, but I am absolutely surprised how much it bounced and how fast it bounced off of that 200. So closing right at resistance over in the dollar going into next week. Natty gas, just kind of a let's take our profits day, a little bit of a green candle off of 3 days, most notably yesterday, days of selling, nothing dramatic, nothing major, going into another weekend. So we'll just have to see what happens, right? For me, at least, that gap is going to need to be mellow. right now. I still lean to the bearish. I think the signals continue to lean to the bearish, but I still think that from a swing trader's perspective, you can do a lot better than trying to deal with something this volatile as a swing trader. Day trader, yeah, I understand. I know people who are day trading this and having a good time, but swing trader, nope, not yet. One day though, one day, and I look forward to it. And this is why I'll look at this chart every day, even though I know on Monday I'm probably going to say the exact same thing I say every day. And one of these days, there will be something nice, something that looks just the way I think it's supposed to. And for 30 seconds a day to look at it and complain about it, I think that's a fair trade. And lastly, our friends in crude. This could be an area, I mean, some really interesting price action here today, and it's probably going to depend on you. But in looking at the way we developed over the course of the week, taking out 55, closing above it, and then basically immediately selling off throughout the course of the week, a nice little small body doji here today, right about the middle of the range, upward movement starting next week. If you are bullish in this sector, I really couldn't make it much of an argument against trading into the pullback. I really don't think I could. I think that would be a fair thing to do if we see that upward movement. I would also think I think for me, I'm going to like other pullbacks better than that one. The break is still what I'm looking for. And that's probably going to continue to be the case unless we, you never know. But today it absolutely is the case. Little upward movement though, nice little doji after a week of selling, nice. I could understand it. Now, just kind of that potential turnaround candle, right? We have to see that movement before, and until then, this is just a doji, right? Nothing, fancy or spectacular about that. It's how does the price react to that. So if you are looking at this from the bullish point of view and wanted to pull back and weren't like me and needing to see a break, well, you're probably not unhappy with the way it developed over the last couple of days, no doubt. You could probably go in and follow something on intraday to help construct your entry points. There's not anything that I'm going to like. Again, if we see two more dojis on Monday and Tuesday, that could very well change my mind, although I do not expect that by any stretch of the imagination. So you can always, if you're trying to get in on these pullbacks, can always use that intraday to help you get in if you need to. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do the market recap for the day and for the week. An interesting week in the market set up, I think, very nicely going into next week. Got us thinking about, guys, you probably should have a couple bearish candidates in your list. We've been getting a little spoiled on the bullish side of things. So if you needed a reminder, it gave us one. Pullback opportunity within some of these stocks that have shown some good strength and still have some room between where they find themselves today and significant levels of resistance. So I think it was a really nice end to the week. Not a giant red candle to have to think all week, is it a pullback or is this something more? So I like the way it ended personally. And I'm excited about what we've got going on here next week. So ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for the recap today. But as always, make sure you're having a nice weekend. You get through those watch lists, get through those scouting reports, but make sure you're spending time doing the things that you love with the people that you love. If you're out somewhere cold, stay warm. And just know that we're a third of the way through February almost. One of these days it's going to get warmer. So, if that makes you feel any better, and know you're not alone. There's other people out there freezing and tired of the winter too. If you don't have to deal with these cold temperatures, we are all jealous. I promise you that we are all jealous right now. If you are new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you can always be alerted to any new things we've got going on over here. And be sure to head on over to @TackleTrading on Twitter so you can come hang out with us over there, see what we're up to on a daily basis. Always room for more Twitter friends over there. If you do start using Twitter or not, I've not brought it up before, just get in touch with me at FrankMartin23 and I can get you added to our Twitter list as well. A great way for us to kind of I don't even know how productive we are, but it's really cool to wake up one morning and see Tanner showing how cold it is. I've enjoyed our little tackle list that we put together. It's been fun. So if you want to come join us, by all means, just let me know. I'll be happy to get you added over there. If you're watching this a little bit later, don't be afraid to, share your comments, in the comments below. Let us know what you're thinking, what you're seeing. It's always interesting to get other perspectives. There's no doubt about it. I live in my own head all the time, so I love getting other people's points of view. So never be afraid to share those comments with us, guys. I always will read them. So With that, guys, get the heck out of here. Go enjoy what the rest of your day. Stay warm. Have a real nice weekend. Be ready to rock and roll on Monday, but have some fun. Do some, drink some hot cocoa, Tanner, or something along those lines. We'll pick up same time, same channel here on Monday afternoon. So thank you so much, everybody. It's always awesome to see you. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me here on a Friday night. I'm off to the scouting report meeting to go instill some discipline to those guys. So we'll see you guys on Monday. Thanks, everyone, and have a great weekend. Bye now.